For more on this, we're talking now with Alistair, the Chief Executive of China Matters, who had arranged that study tour. Thank you very much for joining us on the ABC.
Thank you for inviting me.
Mr. Nicholas, just to begin with, for some background, can you just explain the nature of the tour that was being organised by China Matters, involving those MPs, Andrew Hastie and James Paterson?
Sure. So China Matters is a not-for-profit independent policy institute, and one of the things that we do, our purpose is to bring about a better understanding of contemporary China so that we have a nuanced understanding of it and it leads to sound policy. To do that, one of our activities is to take a group of politicians and business representatives to China. We take about 3 trips a year. So this particular one was scheduled for December. And what we try to do on the trips is, or what we arrange, is that people can sit down and meet with Chinese who are professionals, educated, sophisticated, fluent English speakers. They're people who are known to me. I lived in China for 13 years. One of our other people, the founding director, was there for close to 30 years. These are people we know very well. And we arrange that they can sit down and have a low-key, open, free-flowing and candid discussion. And nothing is off the table in that type of discussion. So Andrew Hastie, and I'd said this to Andrew and I'd said it to James, they were going to be able to talk about anything they wanted to. They could talk about the Uyghurs in Xinjiang province, the Hong Kong protests, Dr. Young, who is an Australian who's detained in China at the moment, or any range of humanitarian types of issues. The purpose of it is that they get that better understanding of China by engaging directly with real people, PRC citizens, and some other foreign experts that I might have taken them in to meet so that they get that understanding.
Well, that openness and dialogue now has had a bit of a door slammed in its face with the denial of visas for those 2 Liberal politicians. What's your view on the way that this situation has been handled? I do point also to the media release that China's Matters has put out, pointing to the nature of media attention around the selection of those 2 MPs.
Yep. So I might try to put that into a little bit of context. And I think the media has jumped on that, and some other people on the Twitter sphere, and said that we're blaming the media for this. And I want to make it absolutely clear, we are not. China Matters believes absolutely in the freedom of the press and free speech. That's not the issue. The issue that we've tried to bring up is that this was leaked to the media and became a story ahead of us going to China. So we like to take our study tour groups to China, where they get to ask all of the questions that they want to ask, discuss all of the issues that they would like to discuss, and when they return to Australia, we encourage them to go out and talk to the media about what they've learned, the discussions they've had, the hard issues that they have put on the table. The problem is that when we have that sort of media attention before we go to China, it creates an environment that makes it very difficult to have that sort of free-flowing, low-key, open and candid discussion behind closed doors, particularly with Chinese citizens who are going to then open up and say what they think about what's actually going on. And that's the purpose of the visit. The amount of attention that was given to this visit, the other fear we had, was that we were going to have the foreign media following us around in Beijing. We were probably going to have the domestic media following us around. And that would have made it very difficult to manage that situation. And I think one thing I'd like to say, and I've noticed that the ABC is running the tagline on the story today, that they have been banned from China, or it's a Beijing ban. I'd like to point out that in our discussions with the embassy, they've been very careful in the language they used. And that language was that Senator Paterson and Mr. Hastie are not welcome on this China Matters study tour at this time. They haven't said these people are not welcome back in China ever in the future or in any other capacity. They've pointed to this particular study tour, and they've said this is about this study tour at this time. And it really needs to be understood in that context. The other thing is their visas have not been refused. We hadn't even got to the point where we had put in applications for the visas. We haven't filled out the paperwork. So the Chinese embassy dealt with us in a respectful way. And if you understand Chinese culture, it was in a way to also show face to the politicians concerned. They didn't want to deny them the visas. They just gave us that message that this particular study tour with these 2 participants on it were not welcome at this time.
So, Mr Nicholas, what do you anticipate next, not just in terms of the potential for future tours and how that might be viewed, both here and abroad, but also in terms of whether you anticipate that this might make relations, it's, one of a number of areas where China and Australia, we understand that there are points of fault lines between the 2 countries where issues arise that are contested. Do you anticipate that this particular issue may see that further deteriorate?
I don't think so, and I think one of the reasons you can look at it that way, that it doesn't, is the very specific language that the embassy people used with us. And again, coming back to it, they said they are not welcome on the China Matters study tour at this time. And I believe that they would be open to both Senator Patterson and Mr. Hastie visiting China in the future. And I certainly hope that China Matters will be able to take both of them, because I think they would benefit from it. They would get a much deeper understanding of contemporary China and how Chinese citizens see China's place in the world. And that's really what our study tours are about. And I do hope they'll be able to do that. I think it's also important to think about this in another sense. If I could use an analogy, if you were to invite me to come to your house, and I come over to your house and I look at your wallpaper and I say, Miriam, I really don't like your wallpaper, you've got to change it. You might respect the fact that I've come over, I've done that directly with you, and I've done it in a very, very respectful way. And you may or may not decide to change your wallpaper. But if I climb up on the roof of your neighbor's house with a megaphone and I start telling the world, I'm going to go over to Miriam's house and tell her she's got to change the wallpaper, you're probably going to say to me, well, this isn't a good time for you to come over. And I think that's kind of what's happened here. And I think we have to understand that and put it in context. And I think what we as Australians need to do is start to dial back some of the rhetoric that is going on with respect to China. If we're going to get the relationship back on an even keel, we've got to do that. We have to remember this is our biggest trading partner. It is a significant power in the region, and we need to have a good relationship with it. They're going to be there for a long time, and they're going to become even more powerful, and we've got to keep talking to them.
Alistair Nicholas, Chief Executive of China Matters, thank you very much for taking the time to come and speak to us today.
Thank you very much, Miriam.
Thank you. Now returning to other news, and at least 1 home has been destroyed by a bushfire burning out of control